Welcome to this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story podcast. I'm Trista Polo from iwokeupawesome.com, and I am your host. Each week we learn the story behind that vanity plate. You know, the one you saw driving down the road? What did it say? What did it mean? Why did they choose it? Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm really super excited to have this week's guest. The plate may sound familiar to you. It's D8NIT. It's D8NIT from Utah. Dan Purcell is the owner of the license plate. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. Now, you chose D8NIT. Share a little about why you chose that.
Sure. Right after I graduated from college, I got a job in a little town in Idaho. And our neighbor, a few houses down, had a BMW convertible, and their license plate was Idaho D8NIT. And we thought that was so cool. And that couple, they're always flirty and fun towards each other. They'd go out on dates all the time. And, you know, when you have a sexy car, you got to name it D8NIT. So we thought that was really cool. Fast forward many years later, I had my eye on a specific car. And it's a Tesla Model X. And if you know about those, they open, the back doors open like, they call them falcon wing doors, and they
Oh, cool.
fast, and it can seat up to 7 passengers, and we have a large family. So I had all these reasons why it would be the perfect car for us. So we started saving our money, and I will get into this a little more, but it took us a long time to save for that car. And once we finally got it, my wife and I looked at each other. What are we going to call this? And I said, D8NIT, of course. So that's how we came up with that name.
That's awesome. Now, we had a previous guest, also D8NIT. You guys know each other, right?
Yeah, we do. Laura Brotherson.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did she have anything to do with you making that D8NIT choice?
No, in fact, I didn't even know that she had D8NIT on her car either until after I heard about it from your podcast. So,
Oh, how fun.
and
That's definitely
I texted her, say, hey, Laura, we have the same license plate. Well, very similar, but yeah.
I love that. So you have the Tesla. It has the sexy plate to go with the sexy car. Now, you said that it took something for you to save for the Tesla. You know, those are kind of pricey cars, but you have a little bit of a journey that you've been through professionally. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm a software engineer by training and entrepreneur by hobby. So the entrepreneur bug bit me right after I graduated from college, and I want to start a company. We built a business, and we did professional website design and software development. And that grew and grew and grew. We got to the point where we had 32 employees and over 800 clients all over the world. And it was awesome. And an opportunity came to sell the company. So we're excited because running a company is hard. That's long hours, and it's a thankless job. It's very lonely. And you sometimes work so hard for just such little pay, it feels like sometimes. And often fantasize about, you know, a job at McDonald's or at the post office sounds really good right now compared to running this company. Anyway, so that opportunity came to sell the company. So we go into the negotiation, sell the company, came up with a valuation, and agreed to terms where they would pay 10% down, and 18 months later, the balance would be due with interest. So we signed the papers and we'd go to work together. We merged these two companies together, and life is great for 11 months. On the 11th month mark, the CEO of the company that acquired ours, you know, invited me to lunch, which is always a bad sign, and said, hey, Dan, I got bad news. I'm out of money. There's absolutely no way I'll ever be able to pay you what I owe you. And we're going to have massive layoffs on Monday, and you don't have a job anymore. So that was really hard because you work so hard, and we're really hoping for that payout. And that payout was going to be significant enough that we could pay off our mortgage, fund our kids' college accounts, and have money left over for a fancy car. So that's kind of where our first kind of goal was, to get this fancy car.
So you kind of went from having your whole life set up to nothing.
I guess
no
you could
job,
look at it that way.
no big payout, no
Right.
college tuition, still having a mortgage, so debt. That's got to have really hit your family and you
Yep.
really hard.
It was disappointing. Um, but I did have a few things going for me. One is I have skills. I know how to build a company. I don't want to, but if I had to, I could start over. The second is I had relationships, and that's probably even more valuable than the first. I still had friends. I still had uh, former clients I could reach out to. I wasn't the only one losing my job. Really talented people in that company were also going to lose their job at that time. So it was a prime opportunity to snatch up top talent. So I cried in the closet for about a day and then realized that's going to do me no good. So I just went to work, and that next Monday was a big announcement and everything went down. And then by Tuesday, the next day, I opened another office and we just went to work on starting the company all over again with a smaller group of people.
That takes like a lot of mental fortitude. I mean, you're put kind of like, well, you know what? I was upset for a day, but got back up and went for it. And I'm just thinking about like the average person would maybe need therapy. Like there's a lot to what you
Oh,
went
I
through
definitely
and the
needed therapy.
emotional reaction. I'd love to hear a little bit deeper behind the scenes of what it took for you mentally, emotionally, to start over from scratch when you really were supposed to be done having to do so much hard work.
First things is that during those 11 months I worked for another company. See, I hadn't really gotten a steady paycheck like that for years because I had run my own company. And if you run your own company, you're always paid last. So that was kind of a new experience. But I also learned a lot too. I learned that I actually don't make a good employee. I I like to kind of run my own agenda. I like to set my own goals, not have someone else set goals for me. I think I'm very much a visionary type of a worker, and I was given integrator type tasks. So I got them done, but deep down inside there was something missing. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to create. So in a way, that sudden change, even though the way it came about wasn't the way I would have preferred it to happen, it was it was also an exit for me to kind of, start something over and let the creator inside me loose. The other thing that really helped is at the time, and I still do, sincerely believe the CEO of the company wasn't trying to pull a fast one on me. He wasn't trying to deceive me or trick me out of something. He honestly could not pay me, and he was at the end of his rope. He had tried all of these things and it didn't work. And I get that business is risky. Him acquiring my company was a big risk he took on, probably a little bit too much risk than he was prepared to do. And he probably wasn't very well prepared for that. And so I kind of had to give him a little bit of grace for me to get over the emotional hangups of feeling taken advantage of. Another thing too is my wife and I tend to live frugally. We had savings. We had enough savings that we could last maybe 6 months. Dave Ramsey would be really proud of us. And we were okay. We would be okay. And we lived near family, so if something absolutely awful, terrible would happen, we have a support network built in that we could, help with the what is that? I'm thinking of a crash pad where it kind of absorbs the impact a bit. And to say it wasn't stressful would be not truthful at all. It was stressful. But part of it too is I'm a believer in God, and that's an important part of me you know to kind of take up my case before God and just ask for his help. And I felt like he gave me help.
That's awesome. What I'm really hearing from you is it's not like you woke up one day and had nothing. You had already put structures in place, both mentally, spiritually, and financially, that it wasn't like you were waiting for a guaranteed lottery ticket. This was not your big payday to fix every problem you had amassed over the years. So it sounds like you already had a very strong support system in many areas of life. And I think that I just want to acknowledge you for having all of that set up in place, but also for giving the owner the benefit of the doubt. This has been kind of this mantra I've had the last few weeks. If you're upset with someone, if they've, quote, done you wrong, said something wrong or mean or whatever, to give the person the benefit of the doubt that they were doing their best. They meant it in the best possible way. Maybe they were having a bad day, having some goodwill stores with the people in your life. And it sounds like you had that with the owner so that you could give him the benefit of the doubt when he came to you with this news. I'm sure that helped you reset after it happened.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It's always good in all your relationships. And I like what
Yeah.
you said about it. It takes, you have to have a reservoir of it though. So you have to kind of build up that reservoir, and not just in general, you need to live that way. It's not a if, it's a when something happens.
Yeah.
Stores to draw on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're a software engineer and you have an app that also kind of goes with your license plate, right?
Yes,
Can
it
you share a
does.
little bit about that?
Sure. So a few months after we started everything over, um, I so uh, the stars aligned. Some really interesting things happened. All of a sudden, I'm back to work, and even though it's stressful because we don't have anything and we're kind of starting from scratch, I have newfound life and creativity and passion in my work again. So I'm happier at my work, even though it's more challenging. And then my oldest at that time is around 12 or 13 years old, and he's responsible enough to watch the younger kids. So my wife and I can go out more regularly on a weekend just to have a few hours together on a date. So that was another wonderful thing. And probably for the first time in our marriage up to that point, my wife and I had some really serious conversations about our relationship and how we're relating well together. And part of that was prompted with an opportunity at work or in the conversations with friends and whatever. I call it stage of life or whatever. And we both, for us, realized we had a lot of anxiety going into marriage about our sexuality that we've never really expressed to each other, that we've held on for these 13 years. So we're finally starting to have those really uncomfortable but really important discussions about our sex life. Like, am I a good lover? How am I doing? Like, how can we improve in this area? Or those, it was, we never really brought it up before. So for the first time we are. And for us, our situation is probably different than others, but we realized we needed a lot more information to make our sex life better. So we went on Amazon and found a few books, and then we read some more, and then we found podcasts and blogs. Within 1 year, I think we read like 12 marriage and sex books together. We found awesome podcasts and great blogs. We like devour these blogs and binge listen to these podcasts, and just all of a sudden our relationship gets a lot closer, and we just start really connecting better. And there's something really magical that happens when you're Twitter pated. It's like the sky is bluer, the grass is greener, the sun shines a little brighter, everything is funnier all of a sudden. And we're like living in that like state all over again. It's like we're newlyweds all over again, but better, because we now are more mature and have a little more history. So we're like, holy cow, this is really, really good. If I was a good public speaker, I would probably like be talking about this stuff. Or if I was a good writer, I'd probably write a.
Then now we all know. We all know what it means. That's awesome. So the Intimacy app, is that available on all kinds of phones?
Yep.
Is it in the App
Android,
Store?
iPhone. Yeah, just search the App Store for Intimately Us.
That's awesome. So what can someone hope to get from that app? Would they be able to get all the things that you were able to achieve from your work of that year?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. If you want a better sex life, there's an app for that.
Perfect. If you want to be Twitter pated, there's an app for that.
Yep.
I love it. Now you said you had a couple other apps, or did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, one app is a chat app. So it's not just my wife and I, but many couples like to flirt when they're apart. And texting and whatever is a popular way to do that. But there's a big problem with texting is books or blogs about myself. But I'm neither of those. My only medium I can really work in is software. So I thought we're going to make an app and
Yes.
strengthen their marriages and get, especially in the intimacy department.
Yeah.
So we made an app called Intimately Us. Plus we have a few other apps out now, but that's the main one.
That's great. Now I just have to stop for a moment. You used a word that I had never heard before, and I have a pretty good vocabulary. So I looked it up and it was Twitter-pated. I just want to let everybody know it is excited or overcome by romantic feelings or smitten, according to dictionary.com.
It
So if
comes from the
anybody
movie
else was,
Bambi.
yes, it comes from the movie Bambi. That's exactly right. So if anybody was wondering or stuck on that word, then now we all know. We all know what it means. That's awesome. So the Intimacy app, is that available on all kinds of phones? Is
Yep.
it in the App
Android,
Store?
iPhone. Yeah. Just search the App Store for Intimately Us.
So what can someone hope to get from that app? Would they be able to get all the things that you were able to achieve from your work of that year?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. If you want a better sex life, there's an app for that.
Perfect. If you want to be Twitter pated, there's an app for that.
Yep.
I love it. Now you said you had a couple other apps, or did you
Yeah.
have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah. One app is a chat app. So it's not just my wife and I, but many couples like to flirt when they're apart. And texting and whatever is a popular way to do that. But there's a big problem with texting is that you can accidentally send a message to the wrong person. And it's not just, SMS. There's Facebook Messenger and there's WhatsApp, and all of those platforms are designed to let you communicate with many people. So we wanted an app that you can only communicate with one other person. And so we created Just Between Us is the name of the app.
Okay.
And you install it, your spouse installs it or whoever your partner is, and then you sync. So when you send a message, they're the only recipient ever that will ever get that message. Plus, it's all end-to-end encrypted, so it's double encrypted. So there's absolutely no way an intermediary can get it, and you can password protect the app. So if you have young kids at home like we do, who like to play on our phones sometimes, they can't get into our messages. So,
Oh
and
my gosh, I love this app. That's
you can send
amazing.
photos and videos, and we've built in like some fun conversation starters and topics, and a bunch of flirty graphics that you can put in, and of course GIFs and all that good stuff.
That's adorable. I have never heard of either of these apps. I'm so glad to know about them. That's so fun. Now, you started a business and run it to get it to be so successful. You sold it. You were able to get back on your feet and start a second business, very successful. I'd love to hear some advice how to be a great entrepreneur and how to be a great traditional business with employees. Like, what does it take?
Yeah, my business goal, I started to really take off. My business started to really take off in the last few years once got really good at planning. And that sounds kind of generic. Of course, everyone plans. But what I really mean by that is goal setting, planning, vision, that kind of stuff. So some of the major changes I've made in my life is first, I joined a mastermind group. And I recommend that to anyone who's serious about business to just Google mastermind group for business, whatever. There's like hundreds, maybe even thousands of organizations that provide a mastermind. In case you don't know, it's at its very basic form, it's just getting together with peers to talk about life, business, whatever, and you're there to really help and support each other. It's kind of like having an accountability group. So I joined one for my business, and what helped me there is I bump shoulders every week with other men that think very differently than I do. Yet we all have the common goals and we have common values and we have very different backgrounds. So it gives me insight into ideas that I would never have thought of myself. One of the things that helped me through that in this particular group I joined is a lot of the men in this group, they're all men in this particular group. So I can say there's this book written called The 12-Week Year. Now there's lots of books very similar. There's 12-Week Year. There's 4 disciplines of execution. There's traction, EOS. There's a lot of these, but they're all very similar. And it boils down to you're coming up with a vision for where you want to go. And I picked about a 3-year vision. And then you work on quarterly goals. By quarterly, it comes to like, if you take 52 weeks a year, divide it by 4, that's 13 weeks. And I take 1 week off per quarter. So it's really 12 weeks. So the idea is I plan out 12 weeks at a time. What goals do I want to accomplish then? And what that forces me to, what it forces me to do is it really laser focus on 1 or 2 major objectives to really move the needle. instead of trying to work on a ton of things with a 1 year horizon or a 3 year horizon. So now I'm really like dialing it back down into like, what can I do in 12 weeks, week by week? And then every day by day, what am I going to do to help me to accomplish that week's goal? When I got really laser focused, then I started to really take off. A lot of my initiatives got done, were ahead of schedule on some things, and it made a difference.
And so the mastermind idea of really being able to be part of a group of people up to similar things with a different mindset, I love that. I think that's great. So the 12-week year is a book you would recommend. I mean, I think this actually is good advice, not just for business owners. This is a good advice for anybody who wants to create goals.
Absolutely. We've adopted it in our marriage. That might sound really nerdy, but it works for us. We now
Yeah,
set quarterly goals as like my wife and I, how we're going to run our family. Like,
I
this is what
love
we want
that.
to get done. These are the vacations we'll eventually want to do. So if that's what we're going to do, we need to start planning ahead and saving for this or ideas for there. Or it might be family systems. We have business systems all the time. So we apply that concept like to our family. We have this recurring problem within our home. Let's create a system around it so we don't have to deal with it like that anymore, whatever. So it's not just business. If you're listening and you're in the thick of raising kids like we are, that's totally like it applies. So
And you said you have a lot of kids. How many kids do you
I
have?
have 6 children. Oldest is 15, youngest is 3.
Wow. So now the 15-year-old can take care of the 3-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
That's
Yeah.
nice. That's nice. They start to help take care of the family when they get to be older, I guess.
Yes, for good or for bad. Like the other night, like we got home from our date at 10:30 and they're still up playing. Like like
Oh
we want them
no.
in bed by 9, at least the younger
Yeah.
ones. But anyway.
Yes, yes. Sounds like you need to have a family meeting, create some structures. You have an app for
Yes.
that.
Or if not, we'll have one soon.
We'll have one soon. I love that. And you have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks. This goes more in the strengthening marriage space to kind of go along with the intimacy app that we created. The podcast is called Get Your Marriage On. And similar to yours, Trista, it's an interview style podcast where I bring in sex experts, aka sexperts, to talk about various aspects of relationships and sex and intimacy and how couples can find more happiness and I don't know, Twitterpation.
The theme of this episode, Twitterpation. I love it. So have you had Laura, or are you going to be having Laura on your show?
Yes, Laura has been on my show. Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's a good crossover. Shout out to Laura,
Yes.
because she
She's really
has a lot to
knowledgeable.
say in that arena.
Yes. Mhm.
We'll have a link to that and apps and all that other stuff that you're offering in the show notes so that people can access everything. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. You're finding a place where you can offer great value, and then you're offering a really good product in that space. So who wouldn't want to be your customer?
Right.
It's
Who
perfect.
wouldn't?
So let's get a little bit into your life. You're married, you have 6 children. Obviously, you have a strong marriage. How did you and your wife meet?
We met in middle school and we lived near each other, like near enough that we'd be on the same bus route. We'd be on the same bus and we had the same like mutual friends. We're in the same group of friends, but we never dated seriously through middle school or high school. In fact, she dated my best friend in high school, like after graduation for a while. And there was once we went to different universities. There was one summer I came home because all my summer plans fell through. The last thing I wanted to do was go home, but I had no other choice. So by default, I went home for the summer. Same story for her. All of her summer plans fell through. She didn't want to go home, but what else are you going to do? So she came home for the summer. And that very like next Sunday, we're at a gathering and full of people I don't know. I didn't want to be there. And then I see a friend, a face I recognize, and she's really cute too. And like, holy cow, so good to have a friend. And she felt the same way. And I was actually looking forward to taking a break from dating that summer at college. I've done the dating game. I was a little sick of it. I'm okay for a break. She just got out of a relationship. She turned the guy down for a marriage proposal. She's like, I am done. I just want a break. So we were just back. I had zero expectations. She had zero expectations. So it's just that we hung out every day that summer. And by the end of the summer, we were engaged. And
Wow, what a great story.
we've known each other for years. And it always started with friendship, and it still feels very much a great friendship.
Yeah, my husband and I, we met in college, and he always maintained that he got intimate quickly in every relationship, but because we started out as friends, he feels like that was one of the things that really made our relationship strong and lasting. And we're 25 years married.
Congratulations.
And we didn't even use your app to do that. So imagine how good the next 25 years are going to be.
Very natural.
We're natural. Well, I think anything, like you said, life happens, right? And there are going to be tough times and good times. And so I think that the way you come out of the tough times is you have a commitment and you communicate. You were talking about that as well, right? And you just stick together and give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. And there's one more thing I want to share, if I can.
Please.
And that's having a relationship to your desires. So we still, even though our first plan A fell through and we had to start our business over, that fancy car was still something we wanted, or that I wanted. I should be really clear saying I persuaded my wife. She wanted it too. But so we started saving for it. In fact, we had an old savings account that we didn't really use for anything. So we made that like our Tesla fund. So we just, extra jobs, extra money, whatever left over, it kind of went into this fund. And by year 3 or so, we had enough money in there to buy it, but we didn't buy it. I just sat on it. And I had a hard time committing to myself to spend money on such, it seemed at the time like a frivolous purchase. Like, that's a lot of money that we could spend on like paying down our mortgage, or what about kids funds?
Sure.
Like
yeah.
And then the other thing was like, am I really buying it because I want it, or am I buying it because I want to look good in front of other people? And if I'm buying it to look good, that's not a good reason to buy it. So I really struggled with my giving myself permission to treat myself. And then my wife and I we bought an e-course together, and this about a personal development. The person was talking a lot about desire and how it's essential for us to cultivate desires. That propels our growth as humans by having desires and growth. And unfortunately, a lot of American culture tries to suppress desire and make us like, you're a good person if you're needless and wantless. Like, I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I'm just here to give. And it's a facade with the appearance that you don't need anything. But what that does to us as people is it turns us to an empty shell of a person. We look good on the outside, but then inside we never cultivate desire, and how important it is to cultivate that. And I'm like, that's what I'm missing in my life. Like, I've wanted this forever. I've saved for it. We have the money for it, but I'm not giving myself permission to finally do it. And then the moment like that switch went off in my head, like, okay, we're going to do it. It was an amazing experience, and I wish I would have done it sooner. So my advice to anyone listening is work on cultivating your desires. And it's really okay if you've done the work for it to go forward with whatever it is that you work for. That's what makes life worth living.
That's beautiful, because I have the same thing. I'll have the money in the bank, but I'm afraid to spend it on the thing I want, because what if I need it for something else? What if something happens that, it was a mistake to do it? So I think that's what I needed to hear as well, is if you have the money, you've worked toward getting something, you desire it, having something you desire, being able to see your goal to fruition is as important a step as saving the money for it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. So you have lots of kids, and you have a very active dating life with your wife. Do you also do stuff with your kids as well? Like, what do you guys do to have fun and enjoy each other's company.
We live in a really unique part of the United States. We live in a part called St. George, Utah, southern Utah. It's like Phoenix or Las Vegas climate. So we have warm winters, really hot summers, but it's arid and dry. And it's sunny over 300 days of the year here. So there's a lot to do outdoors. There's a lot of mountains, mountain climbing, hiking. Zion National Park is a very top 10 national park. It's essentially our backyard. So we go there, and surrounding areas have tons of things to do. So for us, with our kids, we spend a lot of time outdoors. We'll go camping, or just go out for the day. We like to play board games at home. We have a few favorite YouTube channels that we like, that the kids like. So we'll do that. We're having fun around Christmas time with preparing for Christmas. And last night we went and delivered treats to neighbors. Just, there's a lot of fun things to do. So there's
That's
never a
great. Yeah, I love that. So is there anything else you'd like us to know? You have packed this episode with so much value, and I really appreciate that, because it's been amazing hearing your story, but also the nuggets that you've shared have been really juicy.
One of the influential books that I've read that's really changed the way I think about life in general is called How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. Clayton Christensen, if you're in the tech entrepreneur space at all, he's the father of the concept of disruption and disruption technology, like technology that disrupts other companies. Really smart Harvard MBA guy. He takes all of the concepts he's learned in teaching his students at Harvard, but applies them to life. And it really made me think, like, what do I really want to get out of life? Another book that's really influenced me lately it's kind of a funny title, Little Black Stretchy Pants. It's the story of Lemon by the author Chip Wilson, and like how he started that company. And he talks a lot about the doing something every day that scares you. What he means by that is stepping outside your comfort zone. And
Sure.
don't live a life of mediocrity or average. Like, do something to make life worth living. And that's kind of been his life mantra. And I really like that philosophy. So get out there, do something today that scares you, meaning step outside your comfort zone, and really think about, at the end of your life, what is it that's really going to matter, and prioritize that first over the things that seem to matter in the moment but don't have any lasting value.
Good advice and great things to leave us with. Now, I always like to turn the tables before we wrap up and see if you have one question that you'd like to ask me. Do you have a question?
Yes. My burning question for you, Trista, and I've been thinking about this for months, is if you were a zookeeper, what part of the zoo would you like to be in charge of?
A zookeeper? If I were a zookeeper, I bet the answer to this question has kept you up at night. Amazingly, no one has ever asked me this question in my whole life, let alone the podcast.
Well, yes. This is a good question then.
It is a good question. And you know what is so funny? Anybody who knows me and is listening to this conversation right now, they will probably be laughing, because I am not a zoo person. I hate zoos. I find zoos to be depressing and boring, and just the whole idea of like caged animals that are waiting there, to be looked at it's just. So for you to ask me this question is so interesting. And yet, all of that being said, I think the way that I'll answer the question is, there was this really cool place that we used to take my sister. She's a lot younger than I am. She's 13 years younger. And so I was married and she was still in school, and she would come visit for the summer. And we took her to this place. It was like this open wilderness area, the Catskill Game Farm. And it had deer and llamas, and it had some zoo-like caged things too. And there were two things about it that I really, really loved. So the one section was where you would get to ride the elephant. Like you actually got to interact with the animal. And I think they had camels too that you could ride. And you just got to ride around in a little circle, but still, like, you got to interact with and ride the animal. The closest thing I've ever come to safari. And then the other piece that I enjoyed the most, and probably even this would be my top choice, was all the babies. So you got to go into the adolescent and baby area, and you could feed the deer right out of your hands. And then you'd sit on a bench with your little tray of wafers, and they would come around behind you, like nuzzling at your neck, looking for treats. And you
Uh-huh.
just felt so loved
Uh,
by these animals that normally you only get to see from afar, like running away from you on the street or in the woods or like that. And so to be able to feed the little piglets and the goat babies with bottles, and to hang out with and interact with and feed the adolescent deer. And I think they probably had alpaca too. So that was my favorite part. So I guess if I had to be a zookeeper, which would be like my least favorite job ever, that would be what I would want to do is hang out with all the babies and the adolescents and help take care of them and give people the opportunity to interact with them. Do they do that at zoos?
uh, sure.
Sure, let's say yes.
But they're right.
Thank you for asking that. That was a good one. That was a good one. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on today. You brought not only so much fun and enjoyable conversation, but you brought a lot of value too. And that's super special to have those nuggets.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story Podcast. Please subscribe to Trista's Plate Story Podcast to get the story behind all those vanity plates driving with you on the road. And if you would like to nominate the owner of a license plate, including you, or visit any of our partners and sponsors, come and see us at platestory.com. That's PL8STORY.com, and give us the details. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop a review and give us a share. I'm Trista Polo, wishing you well on the road to your next adventure.